Hello everyone and welcome to Replay Works, and welcome to the first replay review for the Gundam card game. Now this was a bit of an experiment back in COVID on the original channel for those of you who played Digimon back on release, but the replay review is essentially where I as a player dig into some of the data from the tournaments that happen online, use a deck list, and I have my own little dashboard and little database to come up with some statistics that are, in this case, for me as a player, because I'm curious about how the deck build or how the meta is evolving and what the stat lines are. So, with that being said, let's jump right in. I'm gonna walk you through this one. This is the first one in about 4 years since I've done this, so it's a new and improved version since I've learned a lot since then. So just to talk about what we're looking at today, we're going to be looking at the top 10 placements for the Eagle's Nest Beta Alt-Art Tournament. Now this happened on July 19th, 2025, so this is right before the official release. This was using the cards that were available spoiled, so that's pretty much the entire set 1, before we actually physically got the booster boxes in our hands. At the time of that tournament, only the star decks were around physically, but by the time this goes up, we'll have everything set up in terms of like physical products. There's clients that you can play online, and there's a lot of deck building tools as well. In this case, we'll be using Eggman's deck building tool to kind of look at the deck lists and talk about what we see from there. So, that being said, let's look at the top 3, right? We have green, white, blue, white, blue, white. And blue, white, you see from their classification, there's freedom blockers both ways. If you look at the placement for the color combinations, you see blue, white a few more times, actually dominated the top 4, where it's 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. But the important outlier is that the only green, white in the top 10 eked out a win. So we're going to look at that later on. In addition to that, some other color combinations we have: red, blue, red, green, and blue, green as well. So those are like some little stragglers. Now, what I like to do is show off the top 10 combinations. Now, back in Digimon, we didn't really have these kind of combinations. We just had like specific types of archetypes or deck focuses as well. But because Gundam is a game that lets you mix and match up to 2 colors in your deck, it's pretty streamlined in the sense that we get to see these combinations perform. Now, in this case, like I mentioned, there's 4 blue-white decks, 3 red-blue decks, 1 blue-green, 1 red-green, and 1 green-white. Right, so already off the bat, in this tournament, in the top 10, we see a little bit of diversity in terms of that it's not just two combinations off the bat. Now, what's interesting to me is how many of these decks, of these 10 decks, had the colors in it, right? So out of the 10 decks, 8 of them had blue, 6 of them had red, 5 of them had white, and only 3 of them had green. So this paints a picture that we can see that blue is essentially the dominant color, while red and white, you're vying to see which one's going to be doing better, and then green is a little bit more niche in that sense. So in this case, green is a splash, but we can definitely see that blue is one of the top picks for quite a number of reasons that we're going to cover here. Now, from all the deck lists I compiled, all 10 of them, what I also would like to do for each color is talk about which cards are the most represented. Now, I go ahead and say, well, out of how many decks, which one has like 50% or higher? That's kind of like my general rule, unless, like green only has 3 decks, so I'm gonna pick like the top 2 or whatever number it has from there. But in this case, blue's pretty clear cut. 4 and above makes this list, and in every single deck, we have a 4/3 vanilla. And this is probably one of the best vanillas because of the stat line. It's a level 3 cost 2. So if you're going second, you can play it right out of the gate on your second turn without having to use up your EX resource. The 4/3 as a stat line is really big. And the question is it relevant? We're going to start seeing later slides that this stat line is probably strong. Alright, so from here, show resolve. Pot of Greed. No one knows what Pot of Greed does, but Show Resolve draws you 2 cards. In this case, this is in every deck to play as the card that you want to slam down, just to have card advantage, especially in a game like this where you can multi-play cards in the turn just because of how the levels and the cost mechanics work. Replenishing your hand mid to late game is definitely huge when your opponent's already running on fumes. From here, Armor Array, one of the Star Deck cards, great showing. I think it's 2-1. You get 2-1 to your unit, and when it's paired, doesn't have to be linked. You choose an enemy unit with 5 less HP and rest it, which is quite a lot, actually. It's pretty much going to essentially almost assume a kill, and when you pair with the next card, Gundam, you're actually going to be able to repair 2. Now, it's interesting that Armor Array is in every single deck because of its generic pair, but Gundam itself, while it is linked with Amuro, isn't in all the decks. It's actually in 5 out of 8 decks. So I think it's an interesting note that people are opting to just play Amuro objectively as the best pilot. It does have a lot of good traits for it, but Gundam itself, it's a little bit half and half. And rounding it out, we're going to go ahead and talk about the other half-halves, right? The last 3 on the list. So Angsha here, deploy, deal 1 damage to an enemy rested unit, 3/3 for cost 2 on turn 4, or turn 3 if going second. I think it's pretty good in the sense that this runs in line with what the red-blue decks want to do. They want to ping for damage. Not so much the blocker deck, but we also see next card, Gun Cannon. Pair 1, and then when paired, you rest enemy unit with 2 less HP. So it's similar to Amuro's effect, and you get a little bit of repair, but it's a 2/3 as well, and you can play it a turn earlier, so it costs 2. It also has a white base trait, which means that for Link, it teams with Amuro, so it really works out well if you're playing both cards together, because then you get to rest 2 enemy units and essentially swing into both of them and clear your opponent's board. So I think it's really good to know that Gun Cannon essentially is just as good as Gundam in this sense. And then last, we have Benandra Links. This is when Link draw 1. He gives 2/2. It's when you look at it on its own, it's fairly unremarkable, but we're gonna go into the decks later, and you're gonna see why why he is played in those decks as well. Those are mainly focused around the Unicorn subtype. So from here, let's go to white, right? So right off the bat, look at the list. 7 cards on the list, 3 of them are already from the Star Deck, right? And Ale Strike is the cover card for the Star Decks, which is great because we get to see a lot of representation of Star Decks across all the colors. It's pretty big blocker, 4 cost, 4/4. When you're paired with a level 4 higher pilot, which is going to be Kira, you choose an enemy unit, turn to its hand as long as it has 4 less HP. So it's one of those cards that kind of disrupts them, and then 4/4 is blocker, but when you have Kira, it becomes a 6/5. So essentially, you're going to also combo that with the attack trigger. You choose an enemy unit, it's minus 2 AP during the battle. It allows you to take less damage to whatever you're swinging into, or you're setting up for another unit to swing freely into, let's say, a 2/2 or 2/3, right? Now, from here, in all 5 decks, Overflowing Affection, another draw card. This one draws 2, then you discard 1. Essentially, it's an easier to play version where you get to play this essentially if you go first on player 2. But again, at any other point in the game, draw 2, then discard 1. You can get rid of low cost vanilla that you don't need anymore, and essentially rebuild your hand from there. So again, the fact that both draw cards are run in every deck that sees those colors is pretty telling right now in the early stages of the game. And last but not least, the last Star Deck card is Archangel. This one, essentially, you pay 2 during your main, and then you choose a friendly unit blocker, and you activate it. It can't attack for the rest of the turn. But it's also one of the few bases that you see that we're seeing in all the lists. You're going to see it come up where if you're playing a blocker deck, you have to play this. And white is predominantly full of blockers in this case. And I think from looking at the deck list, the blocker that everyone chooses in addition to the Ale Strike is Zwar. 2 for a 3/2. It's incredibly strong. It's going to trade. It can burst your opponent's EX base with just 1 swing. 3/2 is a really good stat line since anyone that has 2/3 doesn't want to swing into it, and 3 attacks is really underrated. We saw the 4/3 vanilla. This trades with that pretty cleanly, so it makes sense why this card is around. Now, going on to the last 2 cards, we got Perfect Strike Gundam, another blocker. roll with the blocker theme. You also get to bounce and unit with 1 HP. But more importantly, I think for this one, when I look at this, is the fact that it teams with any Earth Alliance trait, not a specific pilot. So a lot of the Gundam Seed pilots are going to be using the Earth Alliance trait, which means that you essentially get an easy to link unit. And the fact that it costs 3, it means it's cheaper to play than the Ailstruck. So while its deployability isn't as strong, in a sense it makes up for more flexibility. And then last but not least, the Freedom Gundam. This is the LR for the set. It's shockingly another blocker, but it has the 1 pair ability, so when you pair it, if you choose an enemy unit, gets -2 AP, right? So it's good. The interesting part is that it's a 4/6, which I think is a really big stat line. We'll see when we look at the stats. There's not much there with 6 HP that can cleanly deal with this. I think that even like when you also pair with Kira, it's going to be even larger. So I like it. It's probably the best top end that they have at the moment. Okay. Rolling along, we got Green. Green only had 3 decks in showing, and 2 of these decks were focused on Gundam Wing. So we're just going to see it's going to be Death Scythe, Duo, and the Underground Desert. Death Scythe and Duo kind of go hand in hand. They have to be paired with Operation Meteor Pilot, and it's linked with Duo. 4 costs for 5/4. You can place a rested resource, so you get to accelerate a little bit. And you're doing this when you have level 6, so you probably want to use your EX resource just so you get that back. But he gets first strike this turn. So, I mean, he's mainly used there because he's going to be huge with Duo. And also you get that extra resource. So Duo is like when you link, you can't be reduced by AP, which is a good counter pick against all these blocker decks, because we saw that those decks focus on the link abilities for the pilots, focus on reducing AP. So Duo essentially stops that at its tracks. And then last is one of the cards that's kind of funny to me. It's a 06 base. It only costs 1, has no other abilities aside from getting a shield to your hand. But I think 06 is funny because it's going to be hard to clear. Most bases, actually every other base is 5. I think it's like 1/4, but every other good base is 5, where it's going to be tough to figure out like the correct number. 6 makes it a little bit awkward as well. So from here, last color, square, red. It's interesting. We had a lot of blue, red showing, and the 1 green, red. In this case, all the decks played the Basilius. In this case, it rests the base, choose a friendly unit, gets 1 AP, right? So in this case, that's going to be huge for trading up, especially when you're playing cards that ping for 1 damage. And the fun part about the red is that it pairs very well with the blue ping deck. Now, that was like one reason why I decided to go to the top 10 instead of just the top 8 or top 4 deck list, because there was a good chunk of the blue-red decks that didn't quite make that top 4 cut. But I think it's still important because it's kind of taking advantage of putting damage on the board and then seeing it just a little bit to deal more. Now, from here, we have probably the core of the blue-red deck. Marita Cruz. So during Link, when you attack, choose enemy unit whose level is equal to or lower than this unit, so you're going to pair it with the next 2 cards. You deal 1 damage. So again, the ping strategy is right there. It spells out on the card. This is, Kishtaria is a 2 cost, 3/4 vanilla with a generic Cyber New type trait. 3/4 I think is still like, that's an insane stat line just for 2 costs as well. We saw the 4/3, we see the 3/4. Just like to see which one of these sees more. The fact that this is also just in addition to the Cyber New type trait is huge as well, since you can get that link bonus pretty easily, especially with Marita. And now, the Big Daddy. Well, it's actually not that big. It's only 5. It's only level 5, but when you pair it with a Cyber New type or any new type pilot, which there are a lot of, you choose 1 to 2. That's some weird wording. Anyway, you choose up to 2 units. You deal 1 damage to them again. So basically, when you combo this with Marita, you're going to be dealing damage to 2 units first, and then when you swing with Marita attached to it, you're going to deal an extra 1 damage to anything that's level 5 or below. So with that, you should be able to clear pretty easily, along with the fact that you are linked from then on, and every turn that you are on the board, you're just going to be paying one. So you get to deal with your opponent's board incredibly fast. So now here comes the fun part for me. That's what stat lines. You know, I've always wanted to do something like this, and this game allows me to, because for every single level, we have different costs, AP and HP. I like the fact that when you play a card, it's not all of your resource on that turn. The turn's only, it's like kind of holds you back from what you can play. So if you have a cheap, everything to be cheap costs, as we see, a lot of the cards in between levels 2 and 7 cost less than their level, which is great because you know it's basically to incentivize when you pair or link with a paladin. Now, for me, what's interesting is when I look at the middle tier, right? The level 2, level 3, level 4, look at the stat lines. Now, level 2, it looks like we're looking at the 2-2 stat line for AP and HP, with HP being slightly less. Now, there's some cards that have 1 HP in this stat line. That's probably dragging on the average, but it's also good to know that essentially if you have 3 HP, you're living through anything that's level 2. Now, when we go to level 3s, it's even. The average AP and HP in this tournament, 3-3. Right? Now, for me, when I see that, it says, okay, well, if I have any level 3s that are 4 HP, yeah, I want to play that. Or in this case, I know that 4 HP is going to protect me, and 3 AP is going to be able to help clear board. So again, that's why when we saw the 3-2 blocker, it really helps a lot to know that, well, this is going to be able to trade up to any level 3s. And as we continue along, level 4, we're starting to creep up here and there. The interesting part from here is like level 5, the average HP dips down to slightly below 4. So we're going to assume that most level 5s have 4 HP, which is really surprising, right? Because you think these cards would get beefier. No, they kind of get a little bit more attacking heavier focused. And then as we go to like level 7, level 8, we can see that, well, these are going to be specialized units. There's only one level 8 that was played, which is the Wing Gundam, and level 7 should be the White LR, right? So we don't really, we don't see too much variation there. I think the 5 and 6s show more variations across the colors as well. But yeah, from here, I look at this, if I'm deck building, I'm going to keep these in mind just to make sure that if I know the meta, if I know the stats, I can say to myself, okay, well, in order to safely clear stuff, I want to make sure I have 4 health at this point, right? 4 health, you can see, clears you all the way up to level 4. Level 5 is when you start to go a little bit higher, but when you factor in pilots, you want to factor in link bonuses, you want to make sure that your link bonus gets you to level to 4 HP. And that's why I think the red-blue deck kind of plays with that a lot better, because you essentially get a free stat of just ping damage, right? And that can matter essentially when you just need the extra 1 damage to clear board. All right. So from here, I like to do the thing where I like to look at 4 different types of deck breakdowns. Well, 3 or 4 depending on how the turnout is or the variety. In this case, I'm lucky enough to have 4 different decks to look at. So bear with me because we're going to be in for a long ride. So this is the only green-white deck that's in attendance, right? And we get to see the breakdown of the cards, and you see 29 units, 10 pilots, 6 commands, 5 bases, right? That's the ratio this player was playing. It's good to know the breakdown from there, because you also want to know how many cards per level, right? And in this case, 12 level 2s, 11 level 3s, 10 level 4s, 5 level 8s, and 6 level 6s, and of course the 3 Wing Gundams. Now this is an amazingly nice curve. I like the downward slope. It's very even. I like it. This means that more than likely you're going to be able to play something on curve, whether it's a blocker, whether it's the draw 2, discard 1, you're going to be able to do something from turn 1. If you're going second, I believe this is definitely a go second deck just from looking at the deck list. And I do like how it's very structured in the sense that the curve is very deliberate, right? I can definitely see that they're trying to make sure that they curve out around 4 or 5, so that way they can go ahead and start playing all their link units from there. Yeah. From here, here's our AP for the deck, right? If you want to know what specific deck, this is what's here. In this case, we see a couple like familiar faces, like the 2 drops, right? 3/2 blocker. 3 drops interesting, right? 2 attack, 3 HP on average. For level 5, it's a 4/4 even spread. So, like I was saying before, when you're playing the numbers game, right? You gotta have 4 attack or 4 HP, depending on which one you want to clear. I think this kind of shows that it's going to be pretty dominant. Now, eventually we'll compare this to the other blocker decks, but keep this in the back of your head, right? This is a pretty cool way to see how they built their deck in terms of having the AP in mind. Okay, so I like to do this thing where I just show up the top end units, just the highest level. So we're gonna go ahead, get Wing Gundam 0, Wing Gundam, Death Scythe, right? Again, we got a Star Deck card, love seeing that. In this case, the Wing Gundam 0 is a big board wipe. It's got higher maneuvers, so it can't be blocked, so you should be pushing for game by then. The Wing Gundam from the Star Deck has Breach, so it's going to destroy an enemy base. And remember what I was saying, most of the bases have 5 HP? Well, Breach 5 is important. But even more so important that the base there's an 06 base that you can use that technically would protect you against this from the Breach ability. Now, the Death Scythe we talked about before, so we'll just go ahead and move the deck list, right? This is the deck list. That's the QR code for Eggman events. He has the deck list for the top 4 up on his website, along with the deck builder as well for you to build your own decks. And you can see from here, this is kind of how the deck works, right? We got our 5 bases. The funny thing for me is that there's only one Archangel here, just for the Ale Strike and the Perfect Strike. For the top end, rather, we have Gundam Lithriff and Zwart as well on the bottom. So literally, the one Archangel is there just to work with the blockers that you have. But I think more importantly is the 06. That one I think is huge for the deck since you can play it early, and again 6 messes up a lot of numbers, especially early on when people are trying to just make 5. So I think when those are exhausted, then you play Archangel, then you can start walling up with Perfect Strike or Ale Strike, who, by the way, both pair with Hero. So everything, you can look at the deck list and you see with the Hero pairs with 3 units, and you have your Death Scythe, which essentially is going to help be the big attacker because he's going to be able to beat over the game plan for the other blocker decks. And then from here we have a little bit of ramp cards. We got the Wing Gundam Bird Mode and the First Contact. I think those cards work out very well. Again, going second, you'll be able to start building up resources pretty fast, so you can go ahead and reach 6 probably a turn earlier than your opponent. Drop the Death Scythe, drop the Wing Gundam, and start putting pressure from there. Yeah, it's a very, very good deck there where you sit on the low end with your blockers, with your good statted blockers, 4 HP. Look at you. It's really helpful to know that. Okay, so from here, let's go to the white-blue decks with the most top showings, I guess. So from here, in the cards in the deck, because we have a lot more decks now, we're going to be running into some decimals, right? Some not so perfect integers. But we got 26, 27 card units in the deck, 11 pilots, 7 commands, and between 4 to 5, mostly 5 bases. And the last little sliver is a command/pilot slot, which is a command card that you can also use, or you can use as a pilot if you choose. So you can roll that into whichever one you want. I think in this case it's going to be used as a command, given that I'm pretty sure it's an okay. I'm pretty sure if the card I know it's going to be okay. You just use it as a command. The pilot name is mostly relevant since you don't really have a deck. Don't really have a link unit to use in the deck for that. Alright, so we have a much different average cards per level curve. We have very little level 2s. We have 10 level 3s, 18.5 level 4s, which is essentially like the high end. It's the majority of the deck are level 4s, so you're pretty much sitting there for the first couple turns. If you don't draw early game, you don't do anything for 2 turns, right? They have level 5s, going back down to 10. 6 and 7s does your top end, so a little bit lower. Level 6 is interesting. Like, most decks don't really play it. That's where you had the 0.075. So, yeah, looks like in this case, this deck is going to pop off around turn 4 or turn 3 if you're going second. But I don't think we'll see much, like, in terms of pushing. It's not meant to push. It's meant to just set up blockers, get a wall, start swinging with really strong status, and disrupt your opponent with bounce effects. Okay. And from here we have the cost, AP, and HP. So pretty mixed, right? Got our 3/2 blocker. Love it. That's probably the best level 2 in the game at this moment, just given looking at the statistics. For level 3, cost 2, 3.3. And level 4 is kind of about the same, but they cost 3 now. I think this is when we start to have a little bit better effects roll in from there, right? And then from here, level 5 is interesting because you're just curving out at a 4/4. But 5 is around the point when you start to be able to use your link units and your pilots as well. So the 4/4, depending on what you're looking at, it kind of being like a, I don't know, probably 6/5 or 6/6, depending on which one you link with. Alright, so I'll run through these quick. These are top end units for all the top 3 deck lists, so second, third, and fourth. It's funny because it's just going to be Freedom, Perfect Strike, and Ale Strike, right, for second place. Now, we've seen Perfect Strike, we talked about Freedom, we talked about Ale Strike before. Let's move to third place. Third place it adds a little bit more. It adds that Unicorn right there. So Unicorn Gundam is I would say, the offensive choice to pair with all the rest of these blocker units, since you can essentially play it for free if you're able to play a different Unicorn mode, Unicorn Gundam Unicorn mode. It's paired with Bananja from turn 5, right? And then whenever you attack, you rest enemy units. So the way it works is that you just get to disrupt their field. You get to kill it off if you want to use your other guys, like your blockers, and swing at that, or if you just want to use this unicorn to kill something. It's really just there, I think, just because it's easy to bring out for free when you can do trick play where you swing with the original unicorn and then just sack it to bring out destroy mode, right? Yeah, I think that adds like an interesting top end. Now, we have fourth place, which adds Gundam Aerial Rebuild to this mix of top end guys. In this case, my definition of top end is anyone that's level 5 or higher, since that's kind of like where we see the most amount of units around that like higher scale. Yeah, this one's interesting because when you pair it, you get to bring back a command card from your trash. So I can see this where it's going to be used to get back your draw cards, especially later game. So I think the theory is that if it comes down to the mid to late game when both your opponents are trading resources back and forth, this card essentially gets you back your draw 2 card and also establishes board with a base 5/4 plus Suleta. Alright, and this is the second place deck list. Again, here codes on the top. Along with the stat distribution for this. So you can see the main focus of the deck is focused around level 4s, right? We see OG Gundam, we see Anksha, but we also have like Amuro Ray, Kira as well thrown into the mix along with Show Resolve, right? So you get a whole group of different cards that kind of aid the strategy of I'm gonna draw cards. I'm gonna be able to pop off on level 4 rather with my link units. And then from going on from there, if you have Kira, you're able to put Ale Strike and Perfect, or rather the rest of the top end online. Now for the bases, I like the one random white base. It's just a good card just to bring out the tokens that are just free attackers. But the Archangel is the main focus, since you with the green white deck, you're playing blockers early game. Archangel enables you to do it offensively. In this case, you have larger blockers later on throughout the game. So having 4 Archangels means that early game you can start swinging with your weaker blocker just to either start picking at enemy shields or picking at their base, and then once you bring out Ale Strike, Perfect Strike, you start from there. You can pop off. Oh yeah, and then shout out to the two random Banangers in the corner right there, with no unicorn, but you get a 2/2 bonus. I think that's still pretty strong, to be honest. Like 2/2 just to slam it down is pretty damn good. All right, moving along. We're halfway through the deck list. We got blue green. So blue green's you're gonna see something similar, just because of the virtue of some of the blue cards like Amuro. I think any deck that plays blue is gonna naturally have a higher concentration of level 4s, as we can see from the chart again. Uh, level 4 is 18 cards, right? And we know that it's gonna be Gundam. We know that it's gonna be Amuro. We know it's gonna be your pot of greed, right? But looking at the deck list breakdown, right? We got 28 units, 12 pilots, 4 bases, 4 commands, and then we have the 2 flex spots of the command/pilot, right? Then you have your average cost from here. Since we're not playing white this time, we're gonna see a little bit different distribution on the lower end. 2/2 for 2 is looks like it's pretty across the board for there. 3/3 for 2 costs is also interesting, right? Again, we're seeing a lot of 3s in the lower early game, right? That's why the 4 HP matters. Even against this deck level 4 HP matters, right? 3.5 and 3.5 for AP and HP. It really comes down to what are those cards and are they linked units as well. But what's interesting to me is we look at the 5, 6, 7, and the HP kind of caps out at 4 in the 6 and 7s, right? So they're not really pushing it anything higher. They have to rely on the pilots to be able to push them past that 4. But even with a Bananger that's 2/2, you still put yourself to 6, which I think can be cleared pretty easily with like all the other cards that we've seen so far. Like I think Death Scythe essentially clears most things pretty cleanly in this deck, right? All right, let's take a look at the top end. Right, we see it's Death Scythe and Unicorn. So this is mainly it's focused around bringing out Unicorn, right? So let's look at the deck list right here. Yeah, so we see 2 different types of Death Scythe. We see Duo. So Duo gets to pair with 3 different cards in this deck, which is pretty strong. So we see Rashid's Order. That's going to be your command pilot, but again, you're probably using it just for the command effect, right? And like I mentioned, in terms of the blue, we see Amuro, we see Gundam, we see our pot of greed. Right, so we have 1, 2, 3 already in your level 4 slot, and we see like early on we got in the early game we're gonna have our 4/3, our 2/3, and our 2/2, right? So it essentially creates a lower. I don't want to say like lower HP pool, but anything that has 4 HP is going to be living through these guys until you get to Gundam. You can pair it with Amuro, right? Now the unicorn mode is going to be your 5-drop 4 cost that pairs with Bananger, and that's how you bring out Destroy mode. That's going to be the way they can cheat him in. Well, technically you can do it the same turn that you play it. So if you have all 3 in your hand, you essentially get to plop it down, and then you're gonna put so much pressure on that because you go from a 6/5 into a 5/4 that can rest units. So it works out. It works in the sense that you can use that in combination with Death Scythe to put pressure early. Death Scythe is also really cheap. I can imagine that on turn 4, you're just playing 2 units per turn from there. Just looking at these like the costs for these cards, right? That or you're gonna be able to pair pretty easily. And again, for bases, you see Underground Desert Base, which is pretty sure it's going to be the best green one from the rest of the set 1 meta, but we gotta see that to believe it, right? All right. So last deck that we want to look at, we got a blue-red deck, and this is the blue-red damage ping or damage spread type deck. This was the one that I definitely wanted to cover for sure in this video. we look at the distribution. We got 34 units, 8 pilots, 4 bases, 4 command. Pretty clean from there. I think Like you run the bare minimum of everything else, and then you will just be running anything that can pair or deal damage. That deals like it makes the numbers in this case with the AP. It technically you gotta add +1 to that because you're already coming in and dealing 1 damage, right? So we see 3 threes for your level 3s, and then for your level 4s it's like 3.3-ish, but really, again, these cards are coming down, they're going to deal damage. And then for level 5 and level 6s, they start to cap out from there. So, like, again, for me to go over the attack HP, it's really disingenuous because this deck has so many ways to cheat damage, right? We have Casteria, and then we have the Banshee, which is actually the first time we see him. Essentially, you're going to be getting first strike for the turn, right? And then not only that, you also set the card as active, right? And all you gotta do is just put back 12 cards into your deck from your trash. So you gotta be paired with Merida. But Merida gives 2 attacks, so you're gonna be dealing so much more damage than just 5. You're doing 7 at that point, right? I think this card bridges blue and red together, where it's worth it just to play that as your top end. And let's see, for him specifically, you get to swing twice with first strike for the turn, and then you also get to deal damage because on each swing, because Merida's not a once per turn ability, it's just on attack during link. So Merida's pairs with 1, 2, 3 different units, which I think is huge for this deck. A lot of flexibility there. You have Amuro that pairs with the gun cannon and the Gundam, also huge, where the gun cannon can become are you ready for this? 4/4 on turn turn 4, turn 3 going second. But I think that stat line's huge for this guy because he has repair 1, and you're essentially able to clear so many things and just heal out. It becomes such a nuisance where your opponent has to kill him in 1 turn. Otherwise, you can just sit there with a gun cannon and heal him back up. But then you also have the gun to deal with, right? Again, 5/4. Right, but I think really overall I like this deck because it plays the 2/2 vanillas, so you get to put a lot of pressure early on, and because again you're playing cards that deal damage, these 2/2s trade up to 3 HP, which we saw from previous stats that's going to help you carry very easily from the early game, right? And the 2/2s essentially, again, they're 1+. They don't really need to do anything because you want them to die, so that way you can fuel the Banshee Norn later on in the game. That all creates a very nice cyclical pattern where if you have them and your opponent doesn't want to deal with them, okay, great. You just swing with them. You have the Vasilius base that turns into 3/2 attackers. You can clear EX base pretty easily. Can trade up very easily. Personally, I would love to try out this deck. It seems like a really very technical deck to play, and I think that this deck has a lot of potential, especially when, again, it's run everything's the bare minimum. Like literally, it's only running the 4 pot of greeds as your command. Everything else here, I can see it has a reason, and I love decks like these. So from here, I do have one honorable mention. There is an 8th place red-green deck that I looked at and I thought was amazing. The reason why I thought it was amazing because it's only running 4 shards as a pilot. It's running no command cards. It's basically you take the star deck and you modify it to this, and this is essentially you're gonna start swinging on turn 1. You're gonna be putting down guys. You're gonna give them the boost. You're gonna have a lot of pressure for no reason if your opponent doesn't have any way to board wipe you or deal damage. This is it. I think this deck is very easy to make. I could be wrong. The fact there's only 1 Char's Galgu is a pretty funny sign because it just equips Char to him. So if you use up Char early in the game, you just get to have a free link unit later on. So yeah, he's striking 3 times as fast from there. And then Char he's essentially going to be 1/1 stats, but then when you attack, he gets a +1 attack unit. So I can imagine that if I'm at level 3 and I don't have anything else, I would just, if I already had a 1/2 lying around, I would just equip Char with and just start swinging. because it doesn't matter if shard goes to the trash; you can get it back later. So yeah, I find this deck like amazing. I have so much respect for this deck. If I can't build any other deck, I would build this just because it looks like you can just take a bunch of commons, and probably just one Gelgoot. You just gotta trade for that, and just make the deck and just run with it. I think this deck is very good at a local level. Where, again, when scarcity is there for product, this should be pretty easy to make. So, with that being said, that is the return of the replay review for this tournament. Now, it's run a little bit long, but thank you for listening. I hope the statistics, I hope the musings about the stat lines, about the card choices has helped you do your deck building, or, if you're going to be playing an Eagle's Nest, knowing what some of the top decks are playing is good to know. For that way, you can use past data to figure out what you want to build for current meta, and eventually see if you can come up with a way to evolve that meta as well. In a sense, it creates a flow where the more people look at data, the more they can figure out how to beat that data and recreate that cycle over and over again. Because, to be blunt, we're going to be stuck with set one meta for a really long time. So I want to see this meta evolve. I would really hate to see this meta stagnate, and there's so many interesting card choices within the Gundam card game. There's so many different ways to play the game in the heat of the moment that makes strategy worth it. And I hope I did my job by showing off these numbers. I definitely got a lot of inspiration to learn about how the meta is going just by looking at the numbers, the AP, the cost, the HP, card choices, trying to put myself in these players' shoes in terms of their game plan. I find that amazingly fascinating. But with that being said, again, thank you for listening. If you want to see more of this, please like the video. Lets me know that you're enjoying the content. Please share it as much as you can, especially if you're going to be in a competitive scene. You want to make sure that you and your group of players are essentially pushing the meta beyond what is already out there. Right. So, like it, share it, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next one.